Long before numbers ruled lives, survival depended on fragile promises between strangers. Imagine waking each day, knowing nothing guaranteed dinner, shelter, or safety, except what someone else believed you deserved. In that world, trust was currency, fear was leverage, and every exchange quietly decided who lived comfortably, who struggled, and who vanished unnoticed, without witnesses, records, or mercy. Today existed. There was no money to count, no price to compare, no universal agreement on worth. Value shifted with seasons, hunger, weather, and power. A meal today could be worthless tomorrow. Wealth could rot, wander off, or starve. Control belonged to those who remembered favors, enforced debts, and decided whose need mattered most when survival demanded constant negotiation and memory alone. Early communities survived through barter. But barter was never simple. You had grain. I had meat. Someone else needed tools. Timing mattered. Desire rarely aligned. Every trade required coincidence and patience. If needs mismatched, nothing moved. Entire days vanished negotiating exchanges that solved one problem, while quietly creating three more beneath growing populations. Expanding networks, rising conflict, ambition, uncertainty everywhere. Trust filled the gaps. Money had not yet learned to occupy. Reputation followed families for generations. A good name fed children. A bad one starved them. Memory acted as ledger. Gossip as enforcement. But trust was fragile. It cracked under distance, migration, betrayal, and violence, leaving strangers unable to trade at all beyond immediate circles, markets, villages, borders, safely, reliably. Barter also punished specialization. If you shaped stone or stitched hides, survival depended on constant trading. Skills meant nothing without immediate demand. Surpluses spoiled. Livestock died. Grain molded. The more complex societies became, the harder it was to match effort with reward, contribution with survival, work with security across growing populations, distances, seasons, generations, risk, uncertainty, conflict, scarcity, pressure everywhere. Power thrived in this imbalance. Those controlling land, water, or storage controlled lives. Chiefs, elders, and strongmen became human vaults of obligation. They remembered who owed whom. They decided fairness. Barter did not remove inequality. It magnified it, embedding hierarchy into every exchange without ever naming it formally, openly, universally, consistently, across expanding settlements, routes, tribes, alliances, generations, regions, cultures. As trade routes stretched, problems multiplied. Distance erased memory. Strangers had no shared past. Violence lurked behind every deal. Without a common measure, value dissolved into argument. Disputes escalated. Deals collapsed. The larger the world became, the more fragile exchange felt, like balancing survival on shifting sand beneath expanding commerce. Ambition, migration, risk, fear, opportunity, growth, pressure, uncertainty, tension everywhere. Slowly, humans searched for something steadier. Not an object yet, but an idea, something that could travel farther than trust and last longer than memory. Something recognizable, divisible, storable, something that spoke across language and tribe. The solution did not arrive fully formed. It emerged piecemeal, quietly, imperfectly, shaped by need, fear, scarcity, growth, coordination, power, survival, ambition, repetition, time. In some places, grain became a promise. In others, cattle symbolized stored labor. Elsewhere, shells traveled coastlines, rare enough to matter, common enough to trade. Metals followed, heavy, durable, malleable. These were not money yet. They were bridges between effort and future security, stability and trust during uncertainty, expansion, conflict, trade, migration, survival, planning, memory, obligation, exchange, continuity, coordination, power, ambition. These early stores of value solved problems barter could not. They waited patiently when needs misaligned. They traveled without spoiling. They compressed effort into portable form. Most importantly, they reduced negotiation. A goat no longer argued with grain. Exchange began to feel less personal, less violent, less exhausting across growing markets. Routes, communities, cultures, distances, seasons, uncertainty, friction, fear, conflict. But abstraction came at a cost. Value began separating from immediate human need. A token could matter more than hunger. A store could outweigh fairness. Power shifted toward those who accumulated and guarded these symbols. Exchange became smoother, yet colder. Something deeply human was being simplified, measured, and quietly rearranged across generations, societies, trade, authority, hierarchy, ambition, control, memory, survival. Still, the momentum was unstoppable. Populations grew, trade stretched wider. Complexity demanded coordination. Memory alone could no longer scale. Trust alone could not span empires. Something universal was forming beneath daily exchanges, something that could be counted, carried, and recognized without conversation or shared history. Across expanding territories, roots, cultures, languages, risks, ambitions, conflicts, alliances, authority, governance, order, predictability, continuity. This transformation was not designed by philosophers. It emerged from countless small decisions made under pressure. Farmers, traders, sailors, rulers each solved local problems. Together, they built a system that outlived them. What began as convenience was becoming infrastructure, shaping behavior, expectations, and power itself across societies, economies, generations, trade, authority, survival, coordination, planning, obligation, measurement, control, trust, exchange, memory, time. By now, value was no longer accidental. It was being selected, refined, and repeated. Certain objects circulated more often. Certain measures felt fairer. Patterns emerged. Consistency mattered. The world was quietly agreeing on rules, even if no one announced them. Exchange was becoming predictable, scalable, and governable across regions, markets, routes, cultures, authority, power, survival, planning, coordination, stability, order, time. What started as survival management was approaching standardization. Symbols of value were hardening into systems. Measures were waiting to be named, stamped, and enforced. Humanity stood on the edge of something irreversible. An invention that would organize trust, concentrate power, and reshape every future decision. Whether people understood it or not yet, fully, clearly, consciously, immediately, safely, equally, predictably, forever. Once those measures spread, exchange stopped depending on memory alone. Strangers no longer needed stories or shared pasts. A small accepted symbol could cross villages, rivers, borders. Trade accelerated quietly, like a current gaining speed. What had been personal became transferable. Trust moved from faces and voices into objects that promised consistency, recognition, and continuity beyond any single relationship itself. With that shift, societies stretched wider than ever before. Markets swelled, Routes multiplied. People could work for those they would never meet. Effort became portable. Value could wait. This allowed cities to rise, projects to last generations, and cooperation to scale beyond family and tribe, turning survival into something organized, predictable, and expansively coordinated across time, distance, and human ambition. Authority soon followed these symbols. Whoever defined them gained influence, stamping, weighing, certifying small acts that quietly centralized power. Exchange no longer belonged solely to participants. It leaned on rulers, councils, institutions. Order increased, but so did dependence. Trust was no longer mutual. It was enforced, standardized, and backed by systems that remembered longer than people ever could, across generations, endlessly. As symbols hardened into authority, inequality gained a new engine. Accumulation became visible, countable, defendable. Wealth no longer relied on immediate strength or skill alone. It could be stored, protected, inherited. Gaps widened silently. Some lives moved faster, others stalled. Difference was no longer temporary. It became measurable, transferable, and persistent across time, society, opportunity, identity, and perceived worth everywhere. Work itself began to change meaning. Tasks were no longer valued only for survival. Effort could be priced, delayed, abstracted. One person's labor could fuel another's comfort far away. The link between hands and outcomes loosened. Productivity increased, but so did detachment. As value drifted away from lived experience into numbers, symbols, systems, and expectations, shared collectively across societies everywhere. With scale came anonymity. Exchanges no longer required eye contact. Responsibility thinned. A transaction could succeed even if empathy failed. Distance grew, not just geographic, but emotional. Money allowed cooperation without connection. This efficiency built roads, fleets, monuments. It also made it easier to ignore who paid the unseen costs of progress, expansion, growth, comfort, and convenience for distant beneficiaries globally. Over time, symbols became lighter than the goods they represented. Metal gave way to marks, tallies, promises. Value could exist without physical presence. Belief carried it. Confidence sustained it. The system worked because people agreed it worked. Faith quietly replaced substance, and participation became psychological, as much as practical, binding strangers through shared expectations and invisible trust networks everywhere globally. This abstraction changed behavior. Saving, hoarding, risking, dreaming, all accelerated. Futures could be imagined, planned, borrowed from. Desire extended beyond present need. Scarcity felt different when value could be stored indefinitely. Anxiety grew alongside opportunity. The future became something people could owe, shape, or fear long before it arrived, reshaping priorities, choices, identities, and definitions of security within everyday human life. Money began influencing not just trade, but thought. People compared themselves through numbers. Worth felt rankable. Success gained units. Failure gained debts. Identity slowly entangled with accumulation. What someone had started implying who they were. Measurement seeped into self-perception, ambition, and social comparison, quietly shaping confidence, status, aspiration, envy, fear, and belonging within communities, cultures, families, and relationships everywhere. Endlessly, yet money remained neutral in itself. It amplified intention, not morality. It could build hospitals or fund wars. It could reward creativity or exploit labor. The same mechanism enabled generosity and cruelty. What mattered was how humans used it, and what they believed it represented within their shared stories about value, meaning, power, fairness, and success across changing civilizations. Globally, as money grew abstract, it grew invisible. People felt its pressure without touching it. Decisions bent around it. Lives were planned through it. Absence hurt as much as hunger once had. Presence promised security. Money became an environment. Something lived inside rather than merely exchanged, shaping daily rhythms, expectations, fears, hopes, and quiet motivations within modern human consciousness, constantly, silently, everywhere. Trust now operated differently. People trusted systems more than individuals. Receipts replaced handshakes. Balances replaced memories. Reliability came from institutions, not relationships. This made cooperation vast and efficient. It also reduced the need to truly know one another, thinning social bonds in subtle ways, while expanding networks beyond anything previously imaginable for humanity, at unprecedented scale and complexity globally. Today, money also taught people to think in totals, not stories. Lives became budgets. Time became cost. Choices gained price tags. The world felt measurable. This clarity empowered planning and growth. It also narrowed imagination, encouraging people to see reality through columns, balances, and projected outcomes rather than lived experiences. Relationships and human complexity felt moment to moment by individuals everywhere. Despite this distance, progress followed. Knowledge spread faster. Innovation compounded. Entire civilizations synchronized effort across time. Money made impossible projects possible. It unlocked abundance alongside anxiety. Humanity moved forward carrying both gains and unease, rarely separating the two as trade, finance, planning, and power reshaped collective futures without fully understanding the transformation underway within their own lives continually. Today, money feels natural, almost invisible, like air. Yet it remains a story humans agreed to believe. It shapes what feels possible, fair, urgent, and valuable. It frames success and failure before choices are made. Money did not just change exchange. It quietly trained humanity to see the world differently long before they ever noticed it happening around them. Always.